It's not a matter of civil rights. And I just want to say this as clearly as I can. All the questions that Dr. Smaw did not want to take up today, and I respect the fact that he agreed with others. Nacho wasn't aware of that, but that's certainly his prerogative, and he's acting in integrity towards those he made that agreement with. That's perfectly fine. But I want to guarantee you that these are questions that everyone fighting for, quote, marriage equality is going to have to answer sooner than you realize, and it's going to go in a direction that many of you do not want to go.
Dr. Smaw, what rights specifically do the gay lesbian community want the marriages for? And if the reason behind fighting for same-sex marriages are the rights bestowed, would the gay lesbian community accept gaining those privileges without forcing those who don't agree with same-sex marriage to acknowledge it via the law?
Okay. The simple answer to the question about what rights or what privileges that they want or that they would get, these would be the rights or privileges bestowed upon anybody that enters into a marriage. And the question about whether or not others will be forced to acknowledge it, it seems to me that if you don't want to, it's not like somebody's going to come around and say, do you accept it? And you have to say yes. I can't imagine how you know who's married and who's not married beyond talking to them. So I'm not sure what that question, the second part of the question is meant to do.
All right, Dr. Brown, this is a straightforward question. What's the solution? Same-sex couples will never be happy until they are treated as equals. So how do we solve this?
Well, the idea that there's anything compelling behind someone won't be happy until they get their way, whether it's my way or your way, that I can't think that any adult would assume that's how society operates. I mean, that's what children do having a tantrum, whether it's a fundamentalist tantrum or a gay activist tantrum. So I'm not pointing a finger, but that very argument does not presuppose societal adult thinking behind it. So here's the deal. Let's do what's best for society, and some people will like it, and some people won't. And that's the way it is in America. That's the way it is in the world. So what's the way forward? Treat everyone with civility and respect. Get away from demonizing classes of people. Get away from gay bashing. Have a society in which bullying and name-calling, whether it's because someone's obese or someone's different in a certain way, is a thing of the past, if that could possibly happen. And don't redefine marriage. And if people want to have a relationship, and let me say this again, I didn't marry for government benefit. I can't relate to that. I cannot relate to that thinking that I married so that the government would recognize and confer certain benefits on me, or that was part of the package. After 35 years, I can't relate to that way of thinking. So if same-sex couples want to come together, do what they do, they can do that in our society. And there can be civil commitment ceremonies. They can do whatever they want to do. But we will not redefine marriage or tamper with the foundations of human race because someone's going to have a tantrum, whoever the person is.
Thank you. Dr. Smaw, why is it important to handle claims of gay rights separately from claims of polygamous rights?
I think Dr. Brown in part answered that question for me when he said I made a previous commitment not to. So that's one reason why it's important to do it. But the second reason why it's important to do it is because Dr. Brown and I, if he's so willing, could have a conversation about polygamy or anything else that he wanted to talk about. So it's not that I personally am afraid of debating the topic. It's that I made a commitment prior, and so I'm going to stick to that commitment.
Thank you. Dr. Brown, how is heterosexual adoption any different than homosexual if the heterosexual parents did not produce the child?
A few things. First, let me say you have a fabulous moderator's voice and demeanor, so thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'd love to see you in a debate as well. That would be terrific.
Name the time and place. I'll be there.
My subject or yours? All right.
I think we can come to a collaborative decision.
Okay, wonderful. But thanks. I'm enjoying your moderation. You're doing a great job, sir. I mean that. Okay, so there are a few things. What's the difference between a heterosexual couple adopting, they're infertile, they can't have kids, and a homosexual couple adopting? Well, first, that has nothing to do with the definition of marriage. All right, that's the first thing, which is the subject of our debate. And it's unfortunate that Dr. Smaw made these arrangements. I wasn't aware of them, and they are compelling issues that must be addressed altogether. And so I would hope for further dialogue in some setting about that, because they need to be addressed. They are being addressed. They are in the courts. But so first thing is heterosexuals adopting, homosexuals adopting has nothing to do with redefining marriage. That's number one. Number two, the difference is that a child adopted in a heterosexual home will have a mother and a father, whereas a child adopted in a homosexual home will guaranteed not have a mother or not have a father. By choice. We're not talking about a single-parent family where someone else can be brought in and where you recognize there's a need and there's a burden on this one parent. But by choice and design, that child will never have either a mother or never have either a father. Again, those of you who are raised by mom and dad, tell me which one you can dispense with and throw out and it doesn't make a difference. So profound difference because of male-female versus male-male or female-female.
Thank you. Dr. Smaw, where does the definition of marriage come from? And I suppose I'd personally add, where should it come from?
Where should it come from? Thanks, Luke. Okay, so if the question is where did it come from the Defense of Marriage Act in a legal sense. And the Defense of Marriage Act, as Dr. Brown consistently pointed out, says that marriage is an institution between one man and one woman. So that's the federal question that we've been arguing here. The thing that I want to point out, though, is that much of what Dr. Brown said was simply that it is not the definition of marriage. And of course, we know that it's not defined that way. But the very question is, should we define it in a way that's different? And by simply saying it's not defined that way, you only beg the question.
Thank you. Dr. Brown, why do you equivocate social institutions or constructs with biological differences or compatibilities?
Well, when we're talking about marriage, we're not just talking about a social institution. We're talking about a social institution between two human beings with various biological components. So marriage is both a social and biologically driven institution. We understand that. Even when people are arguing for two men or two women being able to marry, there's something biological happening, positive or negative. There's something in that equation. So marriage, I don't think anyone would argue with, is both social and biological. And throughout human history, without marriage, there wouldn't be a human race. Or you say, well, there'd be babies. No, but you would not be able to preserve a human race without the structure of a family, without a mother or father, without all these other things that come into play. So it's both social and biological. I don't think there's any equivocation there. I think that's just the fact of the matter.
Thank you. Dr. Smaw, I received a wealth of questions asking some variation of this issue. It says, procreation or reproduction is defined by Merriam-Webster as, quote, the process by which plants and animals give rise to offspring, and which fundamentally consists of the segregation of a portion of the paramental body by a sexual or an asexual process and its subsequent growth and differentiation into a new individual, end quote. How can you say, based on this definition, that gay couples have procreated?
I wish I had gotten the last question, because the last question was a good one, but I'll answer this question. The answer to the question is straightforward. I already mentioned it. There are processes, in vitro fertilization, surrogacy, and gay couples have participated in that. So that's the easy answer to your question. And the point that Dr. Brown was making, and this was a response to, was namely that marriage is for the production of kids. And what I was pointing out is that gay couples can have a kid. And certainly there are enough sperm banks around this country in order for them to find a way to have a kid. And the other thing I'll point out is that Dr. Brown said that without marriage, there'd be no human race. He's obviously have not been on a college campus in a while, because there's a lot of procreation going on. They're just not resulting in kids.
Can I make a comment since he commented on my question?
Sure, let me read the question and then you can build it into your response.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so the question that you should respond to is, you argue that families without a mother or a father cannot successfully raise children. Do you believe that children raised in single-parent or grandparent homes do not grow up with adequate support? Are they not as well developed or happy?
Oh, sadly, statistics are very telling about kids raised in single-parent homes. Kids raised without a father. 75% of teenagers under psychiatric care raised without a father.